They thought he was dead, buried beneath a collapsed trench for 7 long hours. The jungle had swallowed his platoon, and Sergeant Daniel Miles was left crushed beneath dirt and debris. Medics marked him Kia and moved on. But under the suffocating soil, one man refused to die. His lungs screamed for air, but every breath was filled with mud. He couldn't shout, couldn't move. Just silence. Around him, the battle raged on. The rumble of mortars, the screams of the wounded. But inside that grave of dirt, he clung to life with sheer will. This is the true story of Sergeant Daniel Miles, the man who clawed his way out of his own grave in the Vietnam jungle. His survival wasn't luck. It was pure defiance. What happened in the next few hours would change how soldiers saw death forever. Daniel Miles was 23, young, fearless, and carrying scars from months of guerrilla warfare. His platoon called him the Wall because he never cracked, even under ambush. But on March 18, 1969, an artillery barrage would test more than just courage. It would bury it. The ambush came at dawn. Mortars rained down like thunder, ripping trenches apart. Miles was thrown back by the blast, buried beneath a collapsing embankment. His last sight before darkness? A blood-red sky, and the boots of his medic running the opposite way. Time lost meaning underground. He had no idea if it had been minutes or hours. Each inhale was a battle. His ribs screamed. Then something shifted. A pocket of air opened near his face. It was small, but it was enough. His survival had just begun. He began to move. Fingers first, wiggling in inches. The dirt was heavy like wet cement. He remembered training. Don't waste energy. Dig upward, not out. And so, with fractured ribs and fading hope, Daniel Miles began the slow crawl out of hell. Each push upward took minutes. His fingers scraped against roots, rocks, and metal shards. Blood mixed with dirt. Every muscle in his body screamed, but giving up meant death. He could hear movement above, boots perhaps, or enemy patrols. He couldn't risk calling out. Flashbacks haunted him. Boot camp drills, the laughter of his squad, letters from home. He clung to those memories like lifelines. The jungle above may have forgotten him, but his mind refused to. He wasn't ready to become another nameless casualty. Suddenly, the weight above shifted. A rainstorm had started, soaking the ground, loosening the soil. It was both a blessing and a curse. Rain meant oxygen and movement, but also mud filling his mouth and eyes. He had to hurry or drown in the dirt. Using his elbows now, he dragged himself upward. His right shoulder popped with a sickening crack, dislocated. But he didn't scream. Couldn't. One wrong noise, and he'd draw in enemy soldiers, or worse, wild predators that roamed at night. His body wasn't built for this, but his mind was. Survival had become mechanical. Dig, breathe, listen, repeat. He had no idea if it had been 5 hours or 15, but the soil was thinning. He could feel it, just a few inches between death and light. Then his fingers broke through the surface. Cold air hit his skin. His hand, filthy and trembling, reached out from the jungle floor like a ghost. Somewhere nearby, a branch snapped. Someone or something was watching, but he didn't stop. He pulled his head free, gasping like a newborn, eyes blinking against the rain. The jungle greeted him like a grave, silent, eerie, and endless. But he wasn't dead. Not yet. He lay there half buried, heart pounding, waiting for his next move. The rain kept falling, masking his breath and soaking his uniform. Every inch of his body ached. He rolled onto his side, barely able to lift his head. His M16 was gone. His helmet buried. But his instincts? Sharpened. He had one goal now, get out alive. He remembered the last radio call. Coordinates relayed before the ambush. If he could find higher ground, maybe he could spot the LZ. But first, he needed to move. Crawling was slow. Every movement sent fire through his ribs. But the alternative was death. Each step through the jungle was like walking through a haunted house. The silence wasn't peace. It was threat. Booby traps. Viet Cong patrols. Snakes. At any moment, something could kill him. He'd escaped the grave, but the jungle wanted him back. A sudden rustle ahead froze him. He dropped low, instinct, eyes locked forward. Then a voice, whispering in Vietnamese. A patrol. They were close. Feet away. He covered himself in mud again, lying motionless under leaves as boots passed inches from his head. They moved on. He didn't breathe for a full minute. His body trembled, adrenaline in overdrive. He waited, counted to 60, then moved, silent, calculated. He needed water, food, but most of all, he needed to find a friendly unit before night fell again. Miles found a creek, small, clear, and silent. He drank cautiously, checking every angle. That water tasted like life itself. Then upstream, boot prints, deep ones, too deep to be Viet Cong American combat boots. Fresh. He wasn't alone. He followed the prints, heart pounding, each step more desperate than the last. Then movement, a figure, helmet, rifle, American camo. He whispered, "Miles, Sergeant Daniel Miles." The soldier turned, stunned. "Jesus, we buried you." The soldier who spotted him was Corporal Reeves, Miles' old squad mate from Basic. His face was pale, disbelief carved into every wrinkle. "We saw the trench collapse," he whispered. "Thought you were gone." Miles didn't reply. He just collapsed into his arms. They got him back to a temporary fire base, small, exposed, barely more than tents and sandbags. Medics cleaned him up, amazed at his condition. 2 broken ribs. Shoulder out of place. Dehydrated, but somehow alive. One called him the grave walker. But safety didn't last. That night, tracer rounds lit the sky. The Viet Cong had followed them. Miles, still bandaged, refused to sit out. He picked up a rifle with one working arm, posted near the perimeter, and waited for the ghosts to return. The attack came fast. Shadows emerged from the trees, then gunfire. Miles held steady, squeezing trigger after trigger. For someone who had clawed his way out of death, fear wasn't an option. He covered the medics as they moved the wounded. Explosions shook the ground. Then a scream. Reeves hit near the east line. Without thinking, Miles ran to the hail of bullets, grabbed his friend, and dragged him back under cover. His bandages bled through, but he didn't stop. By dawn, the attack was over. The fire base was torn, bodies covered with tarps. But they had held. Miles sat silently on a crate, eyes distant, hands shaking. He had survived 2 deaths now, once underground and once in fire. The CO offered him early evacuation, a ticket home. Miles refused. "I didn't come back to leave," he said. His legend had already started to spread, among troops, among medics, even across radio chatter. The man buried alive had come back to finish the fight. As days passed, Miles became more than just a survivor. He became a myth. New recruits whispered about him, the one who crawled out. Some even asked to shake his hand. But to him, the glory meant nothing. He couldn't sleep. Dirt still haunted his dreams. The nightmares were relentless. He'd wake up gasping, clawing at his sheets. Sweat soaking his back. Every time he saw the trench, felt the weight, heard the soil falling. Survival had a price, and it was paid in pieces each night. One afternoon, a general flew in. He asked for a debrief. But instead of medals or thanks, he gave Miles a choice. Go home with honor or lead a recon unit behind enemy lines. Miles looked him dead in the eye. "I already crawled through hell. Might as well walk into it." Miles took 5 volunteers, men who'd heard his story, trusted him blindly. They disappeared into the jungle. No radio chatter, no backup. Their mission, locate and disable a weapons cache that had claimed 3 American patrols already. They traveled by night, slept in trees, moved like ghosts. Miles led every step. His instincts, honed by death itself, kept him alive. Once, they avoided a trap wire by inches. Another time, he pulled a leech the size of a hand off a comrade's neck in silence. On the 4th day, they found it, a hidden weapons depot under camouflage netting. Guards patrolled, unaware they were being watched. Miles signaled silently. Plan set. It would be fast, brutal, and final. He checked his knife, then gave the order. Like shadows they struck, silence weapons, throats cut in seconds, explosives planted. In less than 10 minutes, the depot was a fireball behind them. The jungle lit orange and red as they vanished into darkness once more. Mission complete. No casualties. They returned to base as ghosts, mud-caked, silent, eyes hardened. Miles handed over the recon notes, sat down and didn't say a word. No cheers, no handshake, just the quiet satisfaction of a job done right. But that silence, it was the loudest of his life. The CO called him a natural-born survivor. Washington wanted his photo, but Miles refused the press. Tell my mother I'm alive. That's all I care about. In truth, part of him never left that trench. His body returned. His soul was still clawing upward. That night, a letter arrived from home. His younger brother had enlisted, inspired by his survival. Miles stared at the page for an hour. A storm built behind his eyes. He didn't want to be a symbol. He just wanted to forget what it felt like to suffocate alive. Days later, another mission. This time, just recon. No action. But as they moved through tall grass, an IED went off, hidden beneath a tree root. 2 men down instantly. Miles was thrown back, ear ringing, shrapnel in his leg. His streak had broken. He woke up in a field hospital, leg bandaged, one eye swollen shut. First thing he asked, did they make it? Only one had. The guilt was heavier than the dirt that once buried him. I survived when I shouldn't have, he whispered. They died when they didn't have to. They offered him a Purple Heart. He refused, said it should go to the men who didn't return. For the first time since being buried alive, Miles cried, not from pain, but because the jungle had taken more than his strength. It had taken his belief in fairness. One night, he limped out into the clearing, away from the tents. He knelt in the mud, closed his eyes, and placed his hand on the ground. You didn't bury me, he whispered. You made me rise. The jungle didn't respond, but the wind seemed to pause just for him. Orders came through. Miles was being rotated home. His tour was over. As he packed his gear, he found a chunk of clay from that trench, the same one he clawed through. He wrapped it in gauze, slid it into his pocket. A reminder, or a scar. The chopper that lifted him out was the same model that had dropped him in a year earlier. But now, the jungle looked different, smaller, quieter, as if even it had grown weary of the war. Miles looked down one last time and whispered, "Thank you for letting me leave." Back in the States, he stepped off the plane to silence. No fanfare, just concrete and wind. A young man with a cane, wearing more weight than medals. He didn't care. He'd made it, against bullets, blasts, and being buried alive. He had made it. He didn't talk about it, not for years. People asked, what was it like? He'd just shrug. How could they understand what it meant to be beneath the earth while life went on above you? Some memories weren't meant to be shared, only endured. Eventually, he bought land, built a small cabin in the woods. No TV, no noise, just trees and silence. He slept on the floor for years, said beds made him feel buried. Every morning, he'd rise before sunrise and go outside barefoot to feel the ground. One summer, a young Marine knocked on his door, said he'd heard the story, wanted to shake the hand of the man who came back from the dirt. Miles hesitated, then smiled. I'm just a guy who kept digging. Image prompt. Scene 48, wide-shot wooden cabin with younger Marine standing at door. Older man extending muddy hand. Golden hours sunlight through forest, legacy-themed tone. That night, Miles sat by the fire, trench clay in his hand. The same piece. He looked into the flames and whispered, I lived because I wasn't ready to die. Not then. Maybe not ever. Outside, the wind stirred the trees, soft, like jungle leaves remembering him. In the years that followed, his story spread, passed from one soldier to the next like a myth wrapped in truth. Some added details. Others left things out. But every version agreed on one thing. Daniel Miles should not have survived. He began to speak, quietly at vet centers and schools, not about the glory of war, but about the weight of survival. He told them the truth. The The hardest part wasn't crawling out. It was knowing others stayed buried. He planted trees every year on the day he was buried, one for each man who didn't return. The hill behind his cabin slowly became a forest. He called it the Watch. It grew taller every year as a standing guard for fallen. On his final birthday, a small group gathered, family, a few soldiers, one journalist. They asked, "What would you tell a man buried alive by war?" Miles paused, smiled softly, and said, "Don't stop digging. Ever." Image prompt. Scene 53. Birthday table outdoors, simple cake. Soldier surrounded by close few. Holding cup of coffee, smile in deep eyes, warm golden light. He passed away in his sleep weeks later. Peacefully. No alarms, no explosions, no jungle. Just quiet breath, and a world above him that had changed because he'd once clawed out of the earth. They buried him on his hill, beneath the trees he planted. No military ceremony, no trumpets, just wind in the leaves and a plaque that read, "Sergeant Daniel Miles, he came back." He was buried once by war, but he wasn't meant to stay under. Because some stories don't end in darkness. They dig until they find the light.